The haunting mystery of the Keddie Cabin Murders. Scene 1. The Morning of Horror. April 12, 1981. Keddie, California, a quiet mountain community surrounded by towering pines and crisp Sierra Nevada air. For the Sharp family, it should have been a peaceful Sunday morning. 14-year-old Sheila Sharp walked the familiar path back to Cabin 28 after a sleepover at a neighbor's house. As she approached her home, everything seemed normal until she opened the front door. Inside, chaos greeted her. Her mother, Sue Sharp, lay bound and brutalized on the floor. Nearby were the bodies of her brother Johnny and his friend Dana Wingate. Blood covered the walls and furniture, and the room bore clear signs of a violent struggle. Yet, there was an eerie silence. Sheila's sister Tina was missing. Her younger brothers, Rick and Greg, along with their friend Justin, were asleep in another room, untouched. Sheila ran screaming to the neighbors for help, setting off one of the most perplexing murder investigations in American history. Scene 2. The Sharps' life in Keddie. The Sharp family had only been in Keddie for about a year. Sue, a 36-year-old single mother, had left an abusive marriage, seeking a fresh start for herself and her 5 children. Life wasn't easy, but Sue was resourceful, working odd jobs to make ends meet. Cabin 28 was part of the Keddie Resort, a collection of rustic cabins that had become low-income housing. It wasn't luxurious, but it was home. The family quickly became part of the small, tight-knit community. Sue was known as a kind but fiercely independent woman. Rumors hinted at tension with certain neighbors, particularly Martin Smartt, whose wife allegedly confided in Sue about her troubled marriage. Could these strained relationships have played a role in the tragedy? Scene 3. The day before the murders. April 11th, 1981, began like any other day for the Sharp family. Sue spent the evening at home with her younger children, Rick, Greg, and their friend Justin Smartt, who was sleeping over. Sheila was at a nearby friend's house, while Johnny, 15, and Dana, 17, went into town. Johnny and Dana hitchhiked back to Keddie late that night, returning to the cabin sometime after 10 p.m. Neighbors later reported faint screams, but no one investigated. What unfolded inside Cabin 28 after midnight remains one of the most chilling mysteries of the case. Scene 4. The gruesome discovery. The crime scene inside Cabin 28 was nothing short of horrific. Sue, Johnny, and Dana were found bound with electrical cords and medical tape. Johnny and Dana had been bludgeoned with a hammer, their bodies showing signs of prolonged violence. Sue had been stabbed repeatedly, her throat partially slit. Blood spattered the walls, furniture was overturned, and a knife was bent out of shape, evidence of the sheer force used. Yet, Rick, Greg, and Justin were found asleep in a nearby room, unharmed. The absence of 12-year-old Tina raised even more questions. Was she taken as a hostage, or had she fled in terror, only to meet a worse fate? Scene 5. Early suspects. Investigators quickly zeroed in on Martin Smartt, the Sharps' neighbor, and his friend, Boubede. Martin had a troubled marriage and a contentious relationship with Sue. He allegedly confided in a therapist, claiming he killed Sue out of anger over her advice to his wife. Bo, a known criminal with ties to organized crime, had arrived in Keddie shortly before the murders. His criminal history and connection to Martin made him an obvious suspect. Yet despite their suspicious behavior and Martin's alleged confession, no arrests were made. Was it a lack of evidence or something more sinister? Scene 6. The role of Tina's disappearance. The disappearance of Tina Sharp added a sinister twist. For years, her whereabouts were unknown. Then, in 1984, skeletal remains were discovered near a reservoir 50 miles from Keddie. The discovery raised unsettling questions. Was Tina the primary target all along? And why had her body been disposed of so far from the crime scene? Forensic evidence suggested she may have been alive for some time after the murders, adding a chilling layer to the case. Scene 7. Theories begin to form. Some believe Martin Smartt killed Sue out of rage, targeting her specifically. His alleged confession supports this theory, but the involvement of Boubede suggests a more calculated plan. The Keddie Cabin Murders unravel a chilling mystery surrounding the brutal killings of the Sharp family, raising questions about the possible motives, suspects, and the eerie disappearance of their youngest daughter, Tina. Valuables were reportedly missing from the cabin, leading some to theorize the murders began as a robbery. However, the excessive violence doesn't align with typical robberies, suggesting a deeper motive. Perhaps the most controversial theory involves local law enforcement. Missing evidence, delayed responses, and the failure to charge suspects have led some to suspect a cover-up. Was someone protecting Martin and Boubede? The brutality and complexity of the crime suggest more than one perpetrator. Justin Smartt, one of the surviving children, later recalled seeing two men arguing with Sue that night. Scene 8. The surviving children. The most puzzling aspect of the crime was the survival of the younger children. Rick, Greg, and Justin were found asleep in a nearby room, seemingly undisturbed by the violence. Justin's memories became a focal point of the investigation. He described muffled voices and shadows, but his recollections were fragmented, likely due to trauma. How did the killers spare these children? Was it intentional, or did they simply overlook them? Scene 9. The investigation's missteps. The Plumas County Sheriff's Department faced heavy criticism for its handling of the case. Key evidence was lost or mishandled, and leads were not thoroughly pursued. The Keddie Cabin Murders unravel a chilling mystery surrounding the brutal killings of the Sharp family, raising questions about the possible motives, suspects, and the eerie disappearance of their youngest daughter, Tina. Years later, new investigators uncovered DNA evidence that suggested multiple assailants, but no arrests were made. The case seemed doomed by early mistakes. Scene 10. The Legacy of Cabin 28. Cabin 28 became a symbol of unresolved horror. For years, it stood abandoned, a grim reminder of the tragedy. It was finally demolished in 2004, but the mystery surrounding it remains alive. Documentaries, podcasts, and online forums have kept the case in the public eye. Amateur sleuths continue to analyze the evidence, hoping to uncover the truth. The Keddie Cabin Murders remain one of the most haunting unsolved crimes in American history. Decades later, the questions persist. Why were the Sharps targeted? Who killed Tina? And will we ever know the truth? What do you think happened in Cabin 28? Share your theories in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more haunting mysteries and chilling stories right here on Legends Unveiled.